I just thought this was kind of a funny thought. It's been there's been this thought of life being an allegory, and me and Jewel have spent so much time in the tiny house, learning to condense things, many things into a small space efficiently. It's given me a great appreciation for things being as compact as possible. And it's also given me a great desire to obtain skill, because I've realized that ability, is often very much tied together in a direct correlation with having the right tool and having the skill to use it. And so if I can have skill built up inside my head, that doesn't take up much space, and then I require less tools because I've packed more into here, so that saves space. Good tiny house mentality. And then for instance, they make lots of Japanese knives, but there's one Chinese knife called the Shiba Z, which Chinese chefs like to joke and pick on Japanese chefs, saying, you need all these knives, we only need this one knife. Well, this type of mentality, although I definitely prefer Japanese knives to Chinese knives, this type of mentality is very helpful when you live in a tiny house and you like to cook, particularly. So the ability to condense things down to their smallest size has become very valuable to me. And so I'll look for the smallest item that's capable of producing the most service, and then I like to try to buffer any difference between a larger item by going online and figuring out and studying and learning a skill. And this has been like an allegory, because it actually I always have a hard time. People ask me, what do you do? Like, what do you do during the day? Like, what does your life look like? And I had a second where I was like, well, you see all the stuff that fits in that cargo trailer back there? How condensed it is, even though it's so small? Well, my moments in life are the same. And when I realized that comparison, I was like, oh my goodness, like, my life really is an allegory or a metaphor almost of a thought. In that me and Jewel, like, our life is this way, where our moments are so rich and full with complex diversity of topic matter, yet the value is very considered and reconciled unto these other different topics, like how you look at how, just like in a tiny house, you have to look at the relationship between the kitchen and the living room. These are two very different subjects that happen in these places, yet you learn how to make them operate harmoniously in the transition points. And you do this by decompartmentalizing and then recompartmentalizing and then decompartmentalizing. Well, it is true. And you pivot back between this zoomed in perspective and this zoomed out perspective. And in this way, you are often very fueled in valuing patience, because patience is connected to excellence. It says in James 1:4, let patience have her perfect work. And I love that, because when you allow yourself the grace to let go of the primary goal and to look at the thing that's immediately in front of you, and then go back to the primary goal and then look at the thing that's immediately in front of you, but to look at the thing that's immediately in front of you and take the time it needs to patiently deal with that well. This has been a massive category for me lately, just letting patience have her perfect work, and how that's tied to excellence. And you're never going to really be able to build a tiny house and live in it unless you are patient. And there is a level of excellence that is required in that your pants need to be in the drawer, not anywhere else. And if anyone else has lived life, you realize there are lots of options for your pants to not be folded and put away in the drawer, as an allegory. So, like, there's many things that we learn in life And my dad has this virtue. He says, don't make in-betweens. Just take this right from where it is to where it goes. A place for everything and everything in its place. Don't make in-betweens. Now, sometimes in-betweens are required, but when they are required, let patience have her perfect work and think through the big, and then look at the topic that's in front of you and solve it. And it is very intricate and tedious and monotonous and all these different things that would make your blood boil. But when you look at the big picture and the benefit, it will inspire you to go through the trauma and the difficulty and the tediousness of looking at the detail, which is not the thing you're most interested in, but prioritizing it as if you are. And this, I believe, is a virtue we see where it says, for the joy set before him, in Hebrews 12:2, it says of Jesus, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. My favorite translation says, for the joy of knowing that you would be his, he conquered the humiliation of the cross. I just love that. But there is this level of just, letting patience have her perfect work and going through the cross, but not going through the cross only looking at the cross, going through the cross for the joy set before you. Because remember, we're called to be imitators of God. Jesus said, follow me, pick up your cross and follow me. Well, how was he carrying his cross? For the joy set before him. He was carrying his cross. And so we also carry our cross for the joy set before us. So there's this value of looking at the big and looking at the small. And this enables me personally to see the value of taking the time it needs to condense a bunch of tools and skills into my brain and tools into my cargo trailer, or, other things in life that are also this way, but this is an easy thing to point at. And it also, in your life, creates an allegory of your moments being rich and your days being full of value, yet it not being troublesome because you're fixed on the joy set before you. So you're not overwhelmed by the dense topic matter. You're actually encouraged, because now what you've done is you have, like Isaiah 32, you have sowed your seed beside every stream. Well, every stream is speaking of God's faithfulness, him bringing that thing into fruition. And so now when you walk in it says, my righteous will live from my faithfulness. Now when you have many, many, many topics open, but those are all tied meticulously to his faithfulness, well, now you are actually poised to reap a great harvest because you are planting beside every stream. And in this way, when you let go of the big thing and die in the meantime, even though it's for the joy set before you're going, you still are dying in the middle. As you die in the middle, while a seed goes into the ground, and unless a seed goes into the ground and dies, it can't produce a harvest. But if it goes into the ground and dies, it will produce a harvest of 30, 60, even 100 times what was sown. And Isaac sowed into God's faithfulness in a famine season in the desert, and he reaped 100-fold, even though the things didn't make sense. So it makes sense, even like if the topic matter in your life is genuinely overwhelming and difficult to manage, hitching your wagon to God's faithfulness does actually set you up to reap harvests that you don't deserve based off of the logical circumstances. And that is us living in grace. And that is a way to massively increase just the overall excellence and fullness and joy in a life. I know it's very dense, but letting patience have her perfect work. Never passing up an opportunity to sow beside every stream, but you're sowing into his faithfulness with the joy set before you in mind. Well, this might give you a greater grace for patience, but love is patient. Love is kind. So if you notice yourself being impatient, well, that's a surefire sign that you are to go be loved, because Jesus did say one thing was required, and it's what Mary of Bethany was doing, and I believe she was being loved by the Lord as she was listening to every word that proceeded from his mouth, and believing it. So that's kind of the everything there again. But that's patience and richness in moments and things being condensed and full, yet not overwhelming, because of the key factor of his righteous living from his faithfulness. You will be faithful, therefore I can rest in the meantime. And the kingdom of God is if one scattered seed goes to bed, wakes up, and the seed grew, and they didn't even know how it grew. This is the way we live, sowing beside every stream, sowing into his faithfulness.